television. Okay, I'm going to start with, I've actually caught up on most things from Sunday. It's Monday today. Well, that's not true. I haven't seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine or Last Man on Earth or The Walking Dead, or I watched the first 10 minutes of Walking Dead. Yeah, of course Glenn survived. Did anyone question that he wasn't going to survive, or that he would survive in exactly the way that he did? Whatever. Let's start with The Leftovers. The Leftovers' most recent episode, called International Assassin, kind of blew my mind. I don't think I've ever seen an episode of television quite like that. It, had a dreamlike quality. It reminded me a little bit of that really weird Sopranos episode where Tony's waking up in a hotel and dealing with, I don't even remember what was happening in the context of the show, drugs or something like that. Felt a little bit like a Lost episode, very Damon Lindelof-y in that way. But then it had this kind of fun, James Bond element to it, or almost like the Bourne Identity, like he's waking up and suddenly he has all these abilities. And it did a good job of feeling like abstract and art filmy, but also pulling you through the episode and keeping you really interested in everything that was going to happen next. And some of the emotional beats of the episode, I mean, they could have felt kind of cheap, just pulling on your heartstrings for the sake of it, but they were affecting me in a really powerful way, and I'm not entirely sure why. This whole there's a great mystery in the episode, Patty's going to be elected president and you need to assassinate her, versus the Glenn thing in Walking Dead. Who could have predicted that this is going to be what we saw after, Justin Theroux's character died in the last episode. You're going to be an international assassin and you have to kill Patty, who's running for president, and then you kill her, but it's actually your body double, and then you realize that's the little girl who you saw earlier. I should have called that, but nice little twist there, Damon. Or Tom Peralta, I don't know who actually wrote the episode. But that whole sequence with, it just did such a good job of capturing dream logic in the way, and I mean, it's interesting, of course, because he knows he's not in a dream, but he knows that it's this weird death purgatory thing, kind of like Lost, the entire time, and yet there's just certain things in the episode that feel like something that would make sense in a dream that you would totally be like, wait a minute, in real life. The fact that everyone's excited to kill a bird, the fact that as the concierge, the same guy who put Justin Theroux in this coma state, they ask him oh, where's a well? And he's like, oh, well, I don't know. And he goes over to the little brochure catalog where, a lot of hotels would have local attractions. And he's like, yes, there's a well, 500 miles away. If you leave now, you can reach it by morning, which is, again, that's totally something that would make sense in a dream, but in real life would be that's ridiculous. But that whole drive with little kid Patty, and you feel so bad for her, and, then the way that she ultimately gets killed, great acting, great writing, just a really well done episode. I'm sure there's a lot of people who think it was a waste of time. No, I think the show is the perfect venue for something like that. So anyway, I think I said last week that I'm not interested in dissecting episodes that much, but this one was really calling for it. I just want to say The Affair, doing great right now. I think they're doing such a better job of playing up the two perspective thing. I mean, this episode did go back to covering the same ground twice, but it was really cool because there were very few bits of overlap. It was covering the same time period, but it actually felt very good in terms of this is Noah going on his book tour and meeting up with his wife by accident, and seeing that time period from both of their perspectives, where they remember things just kind of differently, or I bet they would agree on most of the things that happened that day, but the things that they kind of focused on made a lot of sense for where their characters are emotionally. Noah remembers, a lot of the stuff complaining about the kid reviewer, and and his wife being like, oh, you know what, this isn't my job anymore. I don't have to listen to you complain or whine. And Maura Tierney is much more in kind of a zen state. She doesn't remember it the way Noah does, with them drinking and talking really loudly and all that. For her, it's a much more kind of therapeutic, emotional experience where it seems like she's kind of getting over this whole experience and coming to terms with it. And of course, she remembers a lot more about her daughter, which Noah really doesn't seem to care or think that much about. And oh man, just watching Noah make a fool out of himself in front of the student reviewer and trying to hook up with his publicist, what is wrong with this guy? But in previous episodes or the previous season where some of the stuff just really made me hate him, I mean, I'm not going to say I like him a lot, but at least this episode kept me really interested, and I am very curious to see where everything goes. I'm much more interested in the murder plot than I ever was before. I like that this episode opened with something about it and then kind of, steered away from it for the rest. So I think the show's doing really good work now. I'm really impressed with the affair. Homeland was solid. It was kind of a chest-moving episode, but very... Claire Danes is a fantastic actress, and seeing her figure things out at the end in relation to Miranda Otto. By the way, during the whole flashback sequence, all I could think about was Claire Danes in some of her movies that she was doing around that time. I think that was probably around the time she was doing the Temple Grandin movie, and then Miranda Otto in the flashbacks thinking like, oh, this would have been like around Return of the King, and I'm thinking, I am no man, kind of stuff. But anyway, that stuff is all good, and that's it for TV. Oh, Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones came out on Friday. I didn't have that much time to watch it. We watched one episode. Just want to say I'm digging it so far. I think the show so far seems to be dealing with PTSD in a really strong way. I like the whole setup. Jessica Jones as like a, not reformed, but like ex-superhero, just someone who has these powers, was kind of like, no, I'm not going to be a superhero, and I'm sure we'll learn more about her reasons for that. But also having these abilities and still dealing with someone who, it seems like we're headed towards some kind of horrific rape or sexual predator plotline, which, it strikes me that especially if the show is created by a woman, it's probably going to be handled a lot more sensitively than it's done in something like Game of Thrones, where there's a real power to it and effect, and you watch the repercussions of that in a much more meaningful way. But what I'm thinking about and why I think something like a superhero rape show can potentially be really powerful is when you think about, why something like sci-fi or fantasy potentially can be really good. Anything from like Buffy the Vampire Slayer to Battlestar Galactica is you have these heightened scenarios that, in many cases are very much outside the realm of what we experience in our everyday life, but through the lens of superheroes or fantasy, there's a way to really enhance or bring to the forefront issues that we all can relate to and kind of deal with every day. And so I'm just, again, based on the first episode, I feel like there's a lens there that this episode could tackle some issues in a really unique way that I'm looking forward to checking out. Man in the High Castle, I loved the pilot. I've heard mixed things about the rest of the show. That opened, that was available for streaming starting Friday. I'll be sure to let you know what I think of that. Moving on. Oh wait, this I guess counts as TV. Maybe it's more movie, but John Mulaney, probably my favorite comedian. I don't think I mentioned, it was probably a week ago that Liz and I watched his newest special, which was hilarious, and really great to see him, back to doing stand-up after what could only be described as a disappointment with his multicam sitcom that for some reason he thought everyone was really eager to have back in the world, that style of comedy. Laugh tracks, can't do it. Studio audiences, no thank you. Roach apartment roommate setups. No, there's, I mean, what I'm hoping that show was for him was the equivalent of what Lucky Louie was for Louis C.K., where it's like, okay, I see what you're doing there, not that successful, now go make something that's much more personal and weirder and more driven by your own unique perspective on the world. But anyway, I just really want to recommend both of his comedy specials, because Liz and I watched the new one not too long ago, and some great stories in there about, Bill Clinton and stuff about his parents and his wife and buying a house, and he's got such a great comedic sense of how to tell stories that in many cases aren't anything that unusual. He just has a great perspective on it all, which I think I'm just describing what a good comedian is. John Mulaney, if you haven't seen him, check him out. And then, we were showing Chloe the other day his first special, and I've heard most of those jokes a dozen times, and a lot of them still make me laugh every single time. So if that's not good comedy, I don't know what is. John Mulaney, check it out. 5 stars, confidence of 5. Everything he's done except for Mulaney, which is 0 out of 5.